Welcome to Made to Imagine. In this episode, we are going to be talking with Matt Hill, the managing director at Birdworld, which, for those of you that don't have my accent, is a family nature park here in the UK. Under Matt's guidance, the venue has invested in multiple new play attractions to broaden their appeal with their target audiences, and at the same time, delivered a complimentary rebrand to support their renewed vision for what Birdworld means for visitors. So I'll be unpacking that and more with Matt and finding out just what kind of impact this addition has had on the business. So without further ado, enjoy. Hi, Matt. How are you? Welcome to Made to Imagine.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Now, I've given viewers and listeners a taste of what this chat is going to be about, but I think when it comes to the history of Birdworld, where you entered the scene and where you were prior to embarking on this journey of new attractions and rebrand, it should rightly come from you. So why don't you give us a brief history of time for Birdworld?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, thanks. It's been quite a journey for us, if I'm honest. We acquired Birdworld in 2020, and as you can imagine, that was quite a chaotic year as we headed straight into COVID. So not a good time to acquire a visitor attraction. And our wider history as a business is we're a garden centre group. We now own 5 garden centres in the south of England, and one of those garden centres is on the same site as Birdworld, and that's how we ended up acquiring a bird attraction. So yeah, the first year we were closed for 6 months of that year, and so it was a bit of a strange one. But then my journey personally with Birdworld was a year into owning it. I do come from the Haskins Group. My history is in retail and garden centres. Having acquired this attraction, we then needed to sort of take a look at it. We had a master plan for the site to redevelop a neighbouring garden centre, but also how was that going to work with the site and how could we reimagine Birdworld? Now, Birdworld's history opened in the mid-60s. It was a family attraction, very popular during the 80s as well. But over probably the last decade prior to our ownership, probably had gone through a journey of sort of lacking investment, losing its relevance in a new visitor attraction audience and just needed bringing back to life, really. And so we started that journey. The first full year I was there was the bounce back of COVID as well. And that was maybe a false dawn as well. As a lot of attractions experienced, it was actually quite a good moment for everyone. But actually, as we came out of that first full year after COVID, it was quite quickly realised our numbers were starting to dwindle. And how do we reimagine and how do we reignite the park for the future moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So in summary, you've got this nature park with tons of flora and fauna and some great activities for families to engage with. What challenge was it that you were facing then that led you down the road of deciding on a new play concept?
Yeah. So firstly, we worked with a company to help us understand the feasibility of what Birdworld could achieve, and that was based around what was the local audience looking for, but also what was missing from local attractions. Where could we fill a gap as well that can help bring Birdworld back to life? But the penetration of the local audience, we weren't really penetrating very far, local 30 minutes, but also not very deeply into that audience. So there's a big catchment where we are. So the opportunity was definitely there. And it took a little while. We did a lot of soul searching, a lot of trips around zoos primarily. We're a zoo attraction to begin with. So we looking very closely at that industry, what that had to offer, where we sat within that. But being a bird collection, slightly different in the public eye of a zoo. So actually it's still a family day out. And then we were looking at other attractions, farm attractions, historical houses, other attractions that are trying to widen their audience and trying to, improve their numbers. And that's where play became very relevant in our thought process. We've done a lot of work to work out how the site was going to work, and we had some bits of land that could be used. But then play then became very much the focus of the first phase, shall we say, of reigniting Birdworld and adding in a new concept. And the strategy underneath it really is widen the appeal to want to come to Birdworld and increase the repeatability and also create an all year round product. And they were our 3 pillars for trying to, put this project, bring it to life, really.
Yeah, that's excellent. And like I say, that in that consideration phase, I think one thing I'm interested in is, were there any other kind of options that were put on the table? What else was a potential avenue that essentially wasn't selected, and you chose play instead?
Yeah, we looked at again back at the zoo, our animal collection. We've got a lovely collection of birds. We're actually the only park in the UK that's purely dedicated to birds now. But actually, was it a way? Could we invest in a new penguin enclosure? Could we invest in another aviary of some kind? But actually, that wasn't going to overly change the perception of what Birdworld was to widen its appeal. And that those sort of projects could come later, and we can carry on that journey. But the first thing was definitely to widen the appeal to want to come to Birdworld. And I use myself as a bit of a barometer as well. I live 40 minutes away from Birdworld. Prior to owning Birdworld, I'd actually never visited, and probably because I wasn't interested in birds and it didn't demonstrate its sort of relevance to my family and what we chose to do. But actually, that's where play, very much as a family activity, that family day out, play linked very nicely for a first phase of our development.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I must admit, I've been speaking with. I was just on the last episode of the pod speaking with Matt Stark, a golf course owner and operator, and one of the things he was talking about was how introducing certain social entertainment elements has allowed for attracting people to a venue, even though they may not necessarily be interested in golf. They put in a mini golf course to kind of get that entry level, get a club in someone's hand for the first time, and then they transfer into a tech enhanced range that's got gamification, and that takes them to the next level, and then ultimately is creating people who are passionate about golf at the other end, and they see that kind of movement through those different attractions. I suppose in this case, you're essentially providing something with play that brings people to the venue, and as an association with, they may, like you said, you may not be interested in birds, but I think as a way of getting younger generations and families into coming to the site and experiencing it, you maybe are creating ambassadors and people that love that, out of just bringing audiences to the site.
Yeah, 100%. And we have we have a wonderful collection. We have a lovely story to tell, and we're part of good conservation projects, and our educational value as a site, is very important. And once you break that barrier of let's go to Birdworld, actually people have a really great day. And actually, there's often you speak to people, there's two things you either remember Birdworld for, and that's you went there on a school trip, or actually you spotted the brown signs on the M3. I think as an attraction in the UK, I think we've got some of the highest number of brown signs pointing you to the site. So we're very familiar in the local area. Birdworld had just lost its relevance, and actually getting those people back through the door, having an enjoyable day, word of mouth, so on and so forth. And that's what we say when we say we're reigniting this business. It was much loved in the 80s, and just we're bringing it back to life, and it's really exciting. Really exciting.
Yeah. I must admit, no, the brown signs are, because I live relatively local to Birdworld as well, in and around, and I've heard the brown signs are extremely hard to get. You have to have a lot of longevity in order to get a brown sign in our area. American listeners might not understand in the same way, but if you're from the UK, brown signs, that tells you that fun is ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, we also went through a rebrand process as well, and really we'd identified that play was the concept we wanted to move forward with. But then how do we just present ourselves in a new way? And through that process, we've updated our logo and changed our colorways and everything. But also our tagline is naturally playful because of the animal collection we have. But also, we wanted play to be natural. We wanted to fit. We didn't want it to jar against what we're doing. We wanted it to really enhance what we do and be connected. And we went through a bit of a journey of looking at different play concepts and coming up with a narrative behind it to sort of unlock what our play could be and what the narrative of our play could be under this naturally playful banner, tagline. And we wanted it to sit within the birds and sort of continue that story. And that's where the identity of the outdoor play was very much built around nests within the trees, so towers that sort of replicated nests, and the kids can sort of climb up into this play concept and move around. And then indoors was all about nest boxes. So again, just continuing that story through, and also coming out of the woodlands. We had this lovely woodland space that we could use, and we've knitted the play nicely within the trees. And that was, again, part of the concept. But how our journey with Greenspan is, we had this concept, we knew what we were trying to achieve. We then put it to Greenspan, who, funny enough, we've been talking to for probably the first people I spoke to when we first acquired Birdworld about, the industry, and we looked at dinosaurs and all things like this. But actually, when we had the concept of what we're trying to create, is then put it to Greenspan and also other companies to then come up with their interpretation of the concept and how that can come to life. And that's, from that point on, we had an amazing journey of discovery, testing our comfort zone, really. We don't know, we knew what we wanted to create, we didn't know what was possible. And having Greenspan and others sort of test our limit. But then the final, when it came around to that final decision, we moved forward with Greenspan to build what we have now in the park with our outdoor treetop adventures and our bird baths and our inside play.
Great, and it's a fantastic IP. This kind of idea of the Sprigget characters, and they've kind of cute woodland dwelling creatures that all have different personalities and areas within the play environment. I think it is a fantastic concept, and I think the idea of the kind of treetop bird nests, I mean, it fits absolutely perfectly with Birdworld in general. So with Greenspan engaged, but obviously, lots of other people, at the play. What challenge or opportunity kind of catalyzed your decision to working with us on the project?
Yeah, it was a close run thing by all means, but actually the collaborative approach to the design, we felt very involved as we were going through the process in coming up with how this could look, and maybe some concerns, but also, like I said earlier, stretching our imagination. The technical element or the safety bit, because it's play, was reassuring us that it meets the standards, it's acceptable, because we wanted within the play to be challenging as well. We didn't want it to be too simple. We want children to stretch themselves. We're an educational facility, and I think play education is equal to our animal collection education. But working, alongside Greenspan, you guys really helped us understand what was possible. And then, at that point, we then had appointed, and we're moving forward with the team on site, making sure we all understand the environment we're trying to build within, the challenges, the woodland space, the woodland floor, things like that. And there was a lot of things to overcome, the surfacing, how that's put in place, all those sort of technical elements we were able to work through as well. Again, so the final product was fit for purpose, which was a lovely journey to be on.
Excellent. And so one of the things that we're really tuned into is the sustainability aspect of our projects, especially with most of our play structures being made from kind of Robinia timber. We have to ensure that we're putting back into the environment more than we're taking. I suppose for Birdworld, there must be an added layer to that, with having to consider the protection of existing trees and wildlife that potentially lives on site. How did that need to influence the design of the project from a practical standpoint?
Yeah, so the whole, as I said earlier, we're also building a garden centre on the site as well, and it's a 32-acre site, and it for the whole site to work, we had to deliver a 10% net gain biodiversity, and that was crucial to this project. And things like replanting twice as many trees that we would have had to remove, but also working with the trees the established trees that we have, was vital. So the tree officer was crucial to this process as well. But the natural materials that we were using, not just for the play itself, but the actual building for the indoor play, all of that was well considered, because we're not in the South Downs National Park, we're adjacent to it, but it's very crucial that the whole scheme didn't jar with the local environment. Again, back to we want it to be naturally playful, and that natural element of it is crucial to that design. But again, like I was just saying a minute ago, the flooring, we've got to have rubber safety flooring, but actually it's sat on top of sail web. It's not, there's no dig down into the soil affecting roots. Foundations for the play were also done with pile screws, again lacking any disruption to the trees that are there. So it was all very much well considered through the design of the play, and also our landscape architects, and how this could really work in this environment. Again, sustainability of the Robinia wood. We would expect that anyway, but that is crucial to purchasing this product. That it's got all the credentials it should have for these sort of projects.
That's awesome. And I think one of the things that I think if you've been in this game long enough of creating these spaces, you appreciate that not everything is sunshine and rainbows. There are always kind of challenges that happen. Were there any issues arise in the build stage and kind of like what in regards to the environment or in regards to the actual structure itself, and like kind of how were they handled?
Yeah, I think as the project came to sort of the finishing stages, you start to understand where some of the challenges with how kids are going to interact with it. And because it's a very bespoke product, it's often, actually, is that really going to work? But what was great is, we would have a discussion, you guys would consider, the other options. It would go back to the design team and then it would be adjusted. And there was never an issue where anything couldn't be resolved. We just had to work through any scenarios that came up. In terms of the overall construction, as anything with this level of scheme, time is always against you. You want it open as soon as possible, and we virtually got there. But there's always going to be bits where you have to accept it. That's going to be a little bit, schedule or not. But it's sort of these projects are huge, and I think collaboratively we were able to work together.
Awesome. And I suppose moving on to the kind of more business side of things, these projects aren't an insignificant investment. I mean, having installed many of these as a company, one thing I've observed is that play can often be an anchor attraction, but is normally not the key revenue driver for the business. It forms generally just kind of one element of a multi-activity site. So how did you approach the thinking on where that revenue and ultimately a return on investment was going to come from? And what did that kind of timescale look like for you in your planning?
Yeah, so our feasibility is that we take the business from 100,000 guests, which it declined to over the time we discussed earlier, up to 165,000. So ultimately, feasibility sits in widening the audience, getting more visitors. But underneath that is then what's the day made up of? Catering happens to be about 20 to 25% of our turnover, F&B. Particularly with the Play Barn, that's got a big 250-seater restaurant adjacent to the play concept. Getting that spend per visitor climbing, we've seen that from the word go once we've opened. Actually, just putting 50p or £1 on per guest makes a big difference very quickly. And we haven't taken this project for a quick return. We have got the wider development that sort of underpins this whole project as well. And fortunately, being a family-owned business, is we can take the long-term view on the investment. We can look at it as it enhances the asset value of the site, but also the payback isn't just the Birdworld, isn't just the play. It's also the future sustainability of the whole site. So that has allowed us to invest a bit heavier than maybe it might have been comfortable as a standalone site. There was also a danger with Birdworld that we would overinvest and it would never really make sense, or we underinvest and actually it doesn't make any difference. And there was always a big danger in that. And the early signs, having opened outdoor play last July and then indoor play in December, is we're now pointing Birdworld in the right direction. And that, the reality of the payback will come to light over the next 12 months as we understand what we've achieved. But it's looking very, very promising. But we're probably looking at 15 years payback on this project as a standalone, which is a big leap of faith on this element. But then we have got wider development to support this as well.
Sure. And I suppose I think it's been around 3 months since the indoor play opened, and obviously, like you said, last July is when the outdoor play opened. Have you got any specific metrics that you've observed that moved post opening, and do you have any kind of data to hand that can illustrate that, whether it be attendance, average spend, length of stay, repeat visit rate? Are you delving that deeply into the data?
Yeah, and data is crucial too. We feel like we're a data-driven business, as a lot of businesses are. We're very much close to our numbers, and we want to understand it as quickly as possible as well. But back to from July to to the end of our financial year, which was actually this Sunday just passed, we're 60% up versus the previous year for that same period. Now that's a substantial different business now, and that's really making us feel very confident that the decisions we've made are the correct ones. Now there's still a long way to go. We've got we've got to make sure we've got the pricing right. We've got the offer optimized. Staffing is always a challenge, particularly on a very much a new concept, making sure that wage to sales ratio is correct. So we're constantly reviewing our numbers, and constantly reviewing, are we delivering the concept that we plan to? So, quite a journey ahead. Membership is key to visitor attractions. The annual membership, it's something we always had with Birdworld, but it's very much a simple become a member and here's the price and you can visit as often as you like. We've installed a 3-tier membership model with a weekday term time only, which is sort of the more affordable end, and then an anytime membership, and then a VIP end membership, which comes with a number of added extras. But the anytime membership has been so successful. People have really bought into it. 80% of our audience are buying into that. And subsequently, our membership turnover revenue is actually, for that same period, as we were saying, about 60% up. The membership is actually over 200% up. So people have really bought into the membership and become, new fans of Birdworld.
That's excellent. That's great to hear. And I think you touched on it then, but something I've talked about on pods so far at length is how important it is for modern businesses to provide a complete experience, one that encourages dwell time, additional spend, and makes it easy for people to be there for extended periods. That can stem from the food, the service, and even the technology that you've infused into that experience. How would you say that you've been able to do that for the play barn?
Yeah, well, the dwell time is crucial. Dwell time there's obviously good evidence out there that helps with the secondary spend. The longer you're there, the more you're likely to want to spend on F&B and other activities. So it fortunately is part of the planning process for this whole development. We had to do the study of dwell time, and we were at about just under 3 hours dwell time. We haven't repeated that exercise now, but we will be in the coming months. But we're sure that the dwell time is crept to 3.5, if not beyond that. The value perception of the day out has really improved. The ticket price, what it costs for a family to day out, but actually, you feel that value for money because you're getting far more than you were previously. And I think dragging the kids away from play is the hardest thing. Watching the parents say, "Come on, one more time, one more time." Yeah, that's obviously adding to the dwell time. So the play barn is obviously only been 3 months and going through the Christmas period, and we're now going into some sunny weather, which is great. But starting to understand how that works in terms of the dwell time, because there is some people who just come, they're members, they'll come after school, they'll only spend an hour there, they might have their tea as well, and then they'll head off. And that's okay, that brings the average down. But on a very busy half-term day that we've just experienced, people come and park up for the day. It's a lovely place to stay, kids are having fun, why would we move on? And we're starting to sort of understand what we've created, and there'll be opportunities within that to sort of adjust and diversify in different ways.
So it's interesting because one of the things that we've witnessed in mini golf, that being one of our kind of key areas of business as well alongside play, is that there are models of mini golf venues now that are using either a membership option or an entry fee that essentially allows for unlimited play, which for mini golf, because really they're banking on that associated spend, on that food and beverage spend, on being the winner for them. And in fact, the mini golf is not necessarily going to be the thing that drives the most revenue. But one of the interesting things is that when you pay that initial entry fee, which might be 20, 25 pounds, dollars, whatever it may be, is that they may see good value as 5 hours on site, or they may see good value as 2 hours on site. And it allows people to kind of just work within that model and get out from the attraction what they feel that they've put in. So it's a good model. I suppose you touched on it a little bit, but aside from dwell time, are there any other KPIs that matter most to you when judging the success of the addition of of this and of the treetop adventures and the play barn? Are you looking at any specific metrics?
Ultimately, the metric we're very keen on is our EBITDA performance. Really, we've invested heavily, but taking that out, are we generating cash as a business? How healthy does that look? We've certain KPIs we're very focused on. Our yield, our admission yield, and our total yield. Very focused on that to make sure we get the balance right between memberships, on the day tickets. I don't like to use the word discounting. We're trying to avoid discounting. We want to really value our proposition. Is there any best price possible for different booking days and things like that? But that all feeds into that yield calculation, and we've got some metrics that will allow us to stay in a safe zone as we continually grow, to make sure we're profitable. We need to be profitable to be sustainable, and particularly in the climate of rising costs and wage costs and all those sort of things, we just got to be very mindful. Actually, that the yield really points us in the right direction. And then the NPS, the Net Promoter Score. We've done so much more marketing this year. We got a brand new team, a marketing team, and we've spoken through that marketing to so many more people, which is great. But actually now we've got to use that data that we're now getting and make sure we're targeting our marketing in the correct way, and just make sure our Net Promoter Score is delivering what we believe our new concept should be. And the early signs is that's all very positive. Number of teething problems, we'll get past those, but it's been exciting. It's exciting.
Excellent. Now, to lighten things up a little bit, you may have thought about this, you might not have, but if you had a wish list of what Birdworld can do in the future, a new type of audience to attract, or a new feature or attraction that will push your venue kind of higher and further, what would that look like? Would it be accommodation? Would it be new exhibits or animals, live shows? I mean, my personal preference would be to bring back dinosaurs, but we all know the problems that are associated with that. So where do you sit on that?
Well, we do have a dinosaur trail at Birdworld. The kids absolutely love it. They're not alive, I'll give you that. But but that dinosaur, all those sort of subjects. Our events, our annual events are great fun, and we can keep testing the boundaries with those. Golf courses are on our list as well. We have got a long long list actually of future ideas of what our new success. We've got to continue building. We've got to continue to be relevant, and we're constantly looking out there at what other ideas and whether they're secondary spend options for the day, or whether they're actually part of the ticket. Back to what we were saying, but they're all the great thing is there's so many options out there. We do want to improve our bird collection as well. We want to make that some of the aviaries and some of the exhibits will be certainly getting to an age that they're going to need redeveloping, and that will be equally as fun as designing play. So there's so many things. The trouble is, we finished this project and we're now like, what next? And it's like, it's actually let's settle this down and make sure it works. But no, it's crucial that we're always looking forward. We always think big. We're always trying to push the boundaries, and it's there's so many exciting options out there that we'll continue to review.
I know, and the problem is that I think everyone in this industry, and even adjacent industries, are in that kind of same mindset as well. We're speaking to a lot of casinos who are feeling the need now to diversify and go multi-attraction, and you end up competing with them. And then, this idea of saying that you have to consistently add new things to just keep that kind of audience coming back time and time again. Obviously, it starts with the foundations of building a place that people ultimately want to spend their time. And I think that that's one of the challenges that maybe casinos, it's certainly in this country, are up against, in the sense that, they're stereotypically not seen as entirely enjoyable places to spend your time, except when you're gambling. But I think with the foundation that you've got, I think, there's a huge amount of opportunity to grow there and become a truly, like say, you're already a multi-attraction venue, but essentially kind of erring on becoming an adventure park or a theme park. You start to kind of edge into these other different environments to make, to create enjoyable spaces for families and groups to come.
We certainly won't be putting a casino in. I know that's not on the list. Fundamentally, this first phase of our development was just getting the core of the business right. Back to what we said at the beginning of this conversation, is it lost its relevance a little bit to that family audience. And now we've got this new core of that family day out, a bit of play, a bit of animal, a bit of food, really coming together. But 100% diversification, that's what we've basically done. And we learned a lot of lessons from other attractions. I nod my hat at the farm attractions. These were farmers that, diversified their concept and became attractions. And they've been doing that for a long time. And they've been very, very supportive of what we're doing. I think you do have to look beyond what the norm is. And 100% as an animal collection and the conservation work we do is vital. But we can get very excited about the next other animal, but actually, is it gonna resonate with the audience? And we've got to make sure we get that balance right before, as we add things in. But yeah, diversification and challenging ourselves to think outside the box is definitely what's helped us, grow our business.
Excellent. And I suppose finally, for my last question for you is that for those listening to this that have a venue of a similar size or in a similar situation where they're perhaps toying with investing in a new attraction or diversifying their offering, what would your kind of one piece of advice be? What would you want them to take away from our conversation?
Okay, I think essentially what I just mentioned, really, Stephen, we've got to be brave and got to think outside the box and allow ourselves to be dragged in some uncomfortable directions. And sometimes we work very hard on working out what we shouldn't do rather than what we should do. Sometimes that's quite as healthy in that you end up going, actually, we've looked so hard at that. It really isn't right for our business, but this one is. And that can often help with that decision process. But, we certainly haven't succeeded yet, shall we say. We're pointing Birdworld in the right direction. There's still a lot of learnings to go from here. But, it's been a fun journey, and definitely challenging ourselves along the way is what's brought us to where we are now, is, thinking outside the box and going for something different that we hadn't originally thought of.
That's great advice. Thank you. And once again, congratulations on Birdworld. As someone with young children, it is really fantastic place to visit, and I wish you every success with it going forward. Matt, can you let people know where they can find Birdworld if they want to check it out for themselves?
Yeah, birdworld.co.uk. We're based on the Hampshire-Surrey border near Farnham. If you drive up the M3 from the south coast towards London, you'll see some nicely big brown tourist signs or brown signs that will point you to Birdworld. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We've got some great content going out on both sides of our offer, play and birds, and really get engaged with it. So look forward to seeing anyone who can come and visit.
Excellent. So from me, finally, if you're enjoying this content, please do like this episode and subscribe to the Made to Imagine podcast using the podcast provider of your choosing. And as always, I'm creating this content on behalf of Greenspan, who, not surprisingly, designed and built these incredible play spaces at Birdworld. So yes, spoiler alert, I did have skin in the game this whole time. Thanks again to Matt Hill for coming on and talking to me. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, welcome, Stephen. Thanks.
And I will see you next time.